All right, we're live. Thanks for tuning into the Sheet Metal Shaping Podcast, where we discuss traditional coach building techniques. My guest today on the show is Ryan Bauer, all the way from Australia, Resurrected Metal Shaping. My man, thanks for being on the show.
Hey, how are you, man?
I'm so pumped about this. I love it.
Yeah, it's a pleasure. It's nice to be here, and thanks for the invite.
Yeah, this is great. All the way from Australia. So it's like dinner time in Canada, Toronto, and you are breakfast time and the following day in Australia.
Yeah, yeah, that's it. Breakfast and coffee, and just about to head off to work.
I love it. I love it. So today we're going to talk about a couple things, in particular, your Aston Martin build. So you're working on Aston Martin. I want to hear all about that buck building, how you're making the panels, all of this. Talk a little bit about tools midway, and then we'll finish up with some art. So that's where we're headed for the show. Tell the folks a bit about yourself.
Awesome. I'm Ryan Bauer, and I run the metal shaping shop, Resurrected Metal Shaping, focusing just on metal shaping and restoration and custom work. And all sheet metal, no paint or anything in house. It's just the body and chassis.
Nice. How did you get started in this?
I got started in it quite a long time ago. I actually moved to the UK over to England when I was 10 years old with my family, and my parents, they wanted to sort of travel around Europe and go around and sort of experience the world. So I started over there and started skipping school when I was probably about 15. And I used to get home before my parents did, and that was back when they sent letters and go through the letterbox and take the notes out
Take it out,
going to school and get rid of it. But Dad clocked on and he knew, and he's an auto upholstery guy, and he was working for vintage Bentley restorations, and he also worked for Aston Martin as well in designing the noble cars. And when he clocked on, he pretty much got me some work boots and was like, well, if you're skipping school, you're coming to work. So yeah, so I went to vintage Bentley for a while and was doing a bit of auto upholstery and doing a little bit of fabrication work with some guys who sort of knew a little bit, not a lot on the metal shaping, but basic fabrication. Mm-hmm. And I did a little bit there. And then just as I was turning 16, my dad took me to a car show, and there was a guy who was metal shaping, and I was watching it and I was like, man, this is cool. Like, this is definitely what I want to do, because I started getting really interested in the fabrication side. And then Dad introduced me to some guys who were up the road, and I started my apprenticeship out in the UK and worked for two places. The first place was racing Jaguar, building aluminium E-types. Nice. And then the second place was Leaping Cats, which is a Jag place, doing XK 120s, 140s, D-types, E-types, and all that sort of thing. So traditionally taught with, started off using a lot of hand tools and just learning how the sheet moves and things like that, and being able to do it by hand, and then moving up to Eckold shrinkers and doing more wheeling and things like that. And it was cool, but a lot of repetitiveness, which got me around the basics for sure. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So it was cool because they were a specialist company. You'd make a lot of the same part, which was interesting when I started working for myself, because then I didn't have all these big fancy tools. So
right. Yeah, you're like, oh geez, that stuff is expensive. Yeah.
yeah, that's it. So slowly building up and making my own tools as well. Yeah. And there's still a lot of tools that I want to make. I enjoy doing that.
What was it like training with classically trained builders, or coach builders that were doing some of this stuff, as opposed to learning from somebody of modern times? Like, these people have been doing it for ages.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the techniques are a little bit different to some modern things, and I've moved more on the side of modern techniques. But the best thing I've found with the old school training is the last finishing touches, like really getting edges crisp and just checking that lines are really nice, and spending that time, just 1,000 little taps is better than a few big blows and putting big warps and stuff in panels. So yeah. So
can you give an example of something that would have been, comparable? Give an example of something that might have been, done back in the day a certain way versus today. People would be doing it very different. Can you think of anything? Does anything come to mind?
Yeah, trying to think. It'd be more, a lot more hand tools, hammers and dollies, and spending time moving things, just a little bit more time, and Englishwheel and things compared to powerhammer. I mean, I think the powerhammer's been around a long time in the US, but in the UK, there was none, and there's not many here in Australia either. Yeah.
Interesting. You guys are primarily Englishwheel.
Yeah, Englishwheel.
Or wheel. Okay, is it Englishwheel or wheeling machine? What do they call it in Australia?
Just the wheel.
The wheel.
Yeah, just chuck it in the wheel.
That's right. That's right. We can't give the English any credit. No way. No.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah. No, we shorten everything. So we'll make it the shortest word possible.
So when you were learning from some of these guys, what were some of the things that they were teaching you? Obviously, they were dripping on you every day, saying, "Okay, this is the way that we do things. This is why we do it." What were some of the things that they were showing you that you bring through into your business today?
Well, a lot of the things started with pretty much from basics. So start with flat sheet, learn all the techniques, learn flat forming using a shrinker stretcher, bead rollers, and bringing up edges, and learning how to do it on a flat sheet, and like rolling edges over on a flat sheet, your folds, and then slowly moving to, okay, this shrinker on this flange will move it this way. But what happens if you're making you've hammered something out, sandbagged it out, and you've got to shrink that material on a convex or concave curve, and then how that shrinking works and that material working. So starting from just that flange and moving up to really working how to move material in when you need to move a lot more material and shrink that in, and using tucking forks, sandbags, and then thumbnail shrinking dies in a Pullmax, because there was no power hammers.
That's right. Yeah. Did they have the reciprocating style machines back in the day where you're based out of, or not so much?
Yeah, there was. We had a lot of Pullmaxes in the shop.
Yep.
And that was good. I probably learnt more of that stuff working for myself than I did then, because a lot of things were pre-patterned, pre-made, and that sort of thing. So the biggest learning curve for me was working for myself and figuring it out, and sort of going from scratch, and going, when I shrunk this part, why does it shrink different to it did back then, and working out different tooling. Yeah.
Do you find it's a different flavor in the shop when you're just there alone versus when you're with 10 other people and you can bounce an idea off somebody?
Yeah. Working with other people is great. It's awesome. And I have guys every now and then come in, and they'll have little ideas for certain things, which makes it nice. And even just to have someone, if you're making a big part, to hold the other end. So if you're wheeling, the shape isn't falling in the wrong way, and you're not stretching out, busting your back. So the biggest thing is having a hand, and being on your own is pretty hard. And that's where I think, if I update and get a big power hammer down the track, I reckon I would be a power hammer guy over a wheel guy.
Oh, interesting. Interesting.
Because of working on my own all the time.
Yeah, because it's basically like a second set of hands. It's like the third post, right? You can two-hand a hood or something and pop it right on the dies, and you're working, whereas somebody else has to be on the other end of the wheel.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, and then I gotta, if I have some guys come in and give me a hand on the wheel if I am wheeling something big, it's kind of it's cool for them because then they're learning how to wheel too. But I've got to show them how to wheel. So if they move a little bit and catch an edge, and I might get like a sharp line through the middle of something, and yeah, that sucks.
That sucks. Yeah. Oh man. Well, let's talk about your Aston Martin build. How did this come to be?
The Aston Martin build it's been a build for quite a while. And when I was working for someone, I started the build originally then. But I did the internal frame, fixed that up. That was all in steel. I did that quite a few years ago. I think probably 3.5 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And then with the front end, because there's not that many of that bonnet, the actual body, there's 3 different bonnet shapes for that body.
Really?
And the one that I'm doing is back to the original because it was a race car.
Right.
And that race car was crashing. All the front end got smashed, and they couldn't put that bonnet on anymore because it wasn't being made. So it had an updated bonnet put on. So I'm taking it back to original, but I happened to find one in England, and a guy went over there and did a 3D scan. And then had that was really cool. And it was cool to get emailed and sent the files and sort of see the whole process of the scan and how the guy was doing it. And then he converted that to like the slats that you get for a timber buck. Mm-hmm. And turned it into a buck, and had to fine tune the buck a little bit too. Mm-hmm. And MDF, it's pretty nice because the CNC cutter cuts at a 90 degree. Mm-hmm. So as your sweeps are coming around, you just got to sand those edges off so it flows nicely.
Yeah, I saw that on your Instagram. You could see when it really comes down the nose, you really have to shave it off because it's quite sharp, right?
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it is quite sharp. But when I moved from that shop, because the place I was the only guy metal shaping, so that job came with me when I moved on.
Very cool.
So and to be in business is awesome, and it's something I've always wanted to do, and did little things on the side. And when COVID came around, the workshop shut down, and because it was pretty bad here in Victoria for things closing down. And I was like, well, I've got to keep working. So I built a shed in the backyard, and
where you go
started working, and then upgraded into a bigger building.
Very nice. Your shop looks fantastic.
Thanks, man. Yeah. I'm still doing little updates here and there, and sort of making a few things cool and adding to things. I want to paint the floor. That'd be pretty nice next, because the paint that is on there is coming up.
Nice. Gotcha. So, it's nice, clean painted floor. I think makes all the difference. Like it just brightens the shop, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Especially with cleanup too. I think it's good to, I'll probably sweep the floors 3 times a day. As I'm doing things, I'll pack things away and sweep up and clean up, because it's nice, and it's nice for customers when they come in and see it nice, because then they're like, oh, well, this guy's going to be treating my car just the same.
Exactly. Let's go back to the 3D scan for a sec. So when you had that done, you said you found a hood, you wanted to have it 3D scanned. What did that cost?
I don't know the costs exactly, because the customer was paying for it. I think the first guy he had, because it was overseas, the first guy he had to do the scan, I think he did a little bit of runner with the money. So then, it's really unfortunate. So then we had to get another guy who was a known guy, trustworthy, and he scanned it. So there was 2 guys to get that scan done.
Yeah.
Yeah. So next time I think I'll use some of my contacts over there and
I
make
guess
sure
so.
things are
Yeah.
going correct, because that can happen.
Yeah.
And then a guy, his name's Chad, and the files were sent to him here in Australia, and he was the one who converted the 3D scan to the buck.
Yeah, because I think a lot of people, they forget, like, it's one thing to have a part 3D scanned, whether that's a model or a full-size component or a whole car or whatever, but like you have to do something with that data after it's scanned. Like it has to be converted into a buck, or has to be converted into a mold, or like whatever it is, right? Like a raw data doesn't really do anything for anybody. It's got to be used.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and that's actually something I would like to learn myself as well, and get my head around CAD. So I can scan some things on maybe one side of a car is really good, and I can scan that side and just make a little buck for the other side and punch out a whole quarter, or even with the 3D stuff, doing a wide body, scan something and then on the computer make it a bit wider, pump it out, 50 mil, and then make my own buck, send it off to some CNC guys, and I think that'd be cool. I think that's another thing with modern techniques like the 3D scanning, that's modern, and if we can use it to an advantage, use it for sure.
Yeah,
I think it makes it a lot easier.
I had Aiden on from Bespoke Coachworks. I think he was episode 2 of the podcast, and he built one half of an Auburn or one half of a Rolls. I forget which it was. And then he had it scanned so that he could make patterns for the other side. He's like, well, I'm not going to guess at the second side. I'll just like do one side really well and then just flip it on over. Right.
Yeah. I've been watching his builds. He's got some awesome stuff, killer work.
He does.
And I saw that with 3D scanning one side and flipping it to the other side. I reckon that's awesome. And then it's looking good, looking the same, both sides.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you go back in the 50s, 60s, 30s, like all of these cars pre-modern technology. Some of these cars could be off by 3/4 of an inch, or I don't know, what is that in metric? Like 25 millimeters or something, 20 millimeters.
And like probably around that.
Yeah. Like you'd never see it. You'd never know, but it's not symmetrical, and they still look beautiful. But I mean, like they're not symmetrical sometimes, right?
Yeah. I mean, as long as your eye can't catch it, if your eye can see something that's out, it's probably pretty out for sure. Like a lot of the old Ferraris and things, I've heard things where a door might be half an inch longer than the other side. So that's just the way they work. But I think with shapes, as long as your eye can't tell that something's drastically out, you're pretty close.
Yeah, especially on curves too. Like those older 50s and 60s style cars, everything's so bulbous, right? Everything's very round, and like you can't really measure, but unless you got a profile gauge at a car show, which nobody does, you might get away with it.
Maybe. Yeah, that's it. Yeah, and lower crowns can be harder to do than really shaped up shapes too. So they're harder to get right.
When you're working to a buck for the Aston, how close is close enough in this circumstance?
So in areas where there's a lot more shape, I get it pretty bang on and get pretty close. But say like a bonnet center where there's a big low crown, if you're within a couple of mil in the center, it's pretty good. Otherwise, chasing that 2 mil, you could be chasing it for days. Just trying to get that couple of mil, and it's not something you're going to see with your eye. And at competitions, we don't put a sweep up on there and check it out.
That's right. Any challenges that you've had with that body so far?
No, not too much at all. The only thing I've got at the moment is waiting for the grills on the front. So I want to turn the lips on the front end, and there's a company in the UK that's making the grills in chrome pieces and things like that. So I just want to have that grill so I can make sure the grill suits the buck or the buck suits the grill. Then I can turn edges and things, which would be awesome. And that was supposed to be the end of this month, but not yet.
Here we are. Yeah.
Yeah. They've sent a couple bits of chrome pieces, the chrome strip that goes up through the center and the sides, but just the grills on the front and the grills on the side too.
Yeah.
That I'm waiting for.
When you're turning those flanges, like obviously it's good to work to the component. You ever have a situation where you have to work from photos, you have to work from some obscure measurement where you hope to get it right, but you're never quite sure until the customer receives it?
Yeah. I pretty much wait till I got that part.
Yeah.
Otherwise it could be bang on. And photos are pretty good too to work from. But yeah, I don't know exactly what it is. So I do like to have that. Or it's nice to, if you're the one making the grills and doing that sort of thing, or headlight areas, then you can turn your edges up, make a, circle out of a piece of cardboard of the size of the headlight you want, turn your edges, and then make your ring later because you're making it and you can fit it perfectly.
It's a good point. Ordering a part versus you being the creator of both parts. It's very different, right?
Yeah, very different. Yeah. So it's kind of nicer and easier to be the maker of the whole lot. Yeah.
Is there anything that you've learned on this body buck or on this Aston project as a whole that you didn't know before? Like what crept up? And you're like, oh, I learned something new today.
I've started using thumbnail shrinking dies a lot more. Because just as I was leaving the UK, they got a set. But before that, when I was shrinking material, I was using Eckold shrinkers. And before that, when I started working for myself, it was tucking forks and blocking out either into a stump or a sandbag. So thumbnail shrinkers, they're awesome. They're really cool. And I'm enjoying the little hammer that I got. It's little. It doesn't move crazy amounts of metal, but it plenishes and finishes really nice. The Pullmax features that I have on it are great, and the thumbnail shrinkers are really good too. So it's a nice tool to use, and getting to use that a lot, sort of in the front end, and the lineal stretching dies too. I haven't really used lineal stretching dies much as well, and they were working pretty good on the alley. And then when I move up to a bigger hammer to use the thumbnail dies and the lineal stretcher, that's what I'm really looking forward to. I think
very nice.
That's going to be really nice and good to learn that tool.
What for the folks at home who don't know what the difference is between an Eckold machine and a Pullmax, can you describe the way that the jaws work or the way that the dies work?
I don't know the difference between them that much. Yeah. With the Eckold and the Pullmax. So
the Eckold that
we had was like your kick shrinker.
Yeah.
And it had shrinking jaws that were bigger jaws because Eckold do a whole bunch of products. But the shrinker we had specifically was like a kick shrinker, but just massively beefed up, and the jaws grab the material and pull it together. And that was cool. And the dies were big. They were big dies like that. And then Pullmax was just a fixed stroke and making different toolings for different shapes and body lines and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah. It's an invaluable tool, really. Whoever came up with the thumbnail die way back in the day, whatever day that was, God bless you.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, serious. Yeah. So I'd say the difference in the Eckold was the shrink is a bit more like your kick shrinker, and the thumbnail die shrinks through through a pucker on the fixed stroke.
Yeah. What are your preferences overall in terms of machines? So you talked about the Pullmax a little bit. You talked about being a wheel guy, lesser so on the hammer, but maybe the hammer eventually. Any other preferences in tooling in your shop?
No, not really preference. I mean, everything I got is everything that I need. So everything that I want is a luxury, and I think would make things faster. and improve on finish too. But having a wheel, having a sandbag, and basic hand tools and a shrinker stretchers is the main things that you need.
I think that's really interesting what you said there. Everything that I have is everything that I need.
Yeah.
It's
so
a lot of people are tool junkies. They just go gung ho, right? Like,
yeah, it's true. Yeah. I think, and that's kind of where you learn the basics and you learn how to use your hand tools. You can make them work. So, and you can produce quite a good product. It may take longer, but you can produce a great product with hand tools like the Italians would have done back in the day, doing a lot of hand forming. So everything I want to get is just time saving, making things faster.
Yeah. I mean, when you're into production like you are, you're trying to get stuff out the door. I mean, anything that you can do to save time, I would imagine, would be more cost effective.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, for sure. And it could be anything like sheet metal guillotines over using a grinder. It's a lot quicker to just shove a sheet in and stomp it, and all those little things. And even shop layout, I lay all my tools out to whatever I use the most is closest to my workbench. And whatever car I'm working on, I'll move the car to somewhere else, and then the one that I'm working on next to the workbench. So even that time and moving around to tools and then moving to the car, fitting things up, always have it close by. And
smart, very smart.
Time improvements and everything.
Yeah, like you're on your feet all day. So
yeah, absolutely.
Every step that you can save.
yeah. And I'll go to the gym enough, so I don't need to be taking extra.
That's right. Are you making your own dies for your Pullmax style machines?
Yep. Yeah, I am. Yeah. So I've tried a few different dies, and the first few dies I was making were one-off parts. So I actually went to a hardware store and got some nylon packers, and they rated up to like 100 ton, and they're cheap. So, and because they're nylon, very fast to shape.
Right.
So with making those Pullmax tooling, I thought, that's fast to shape, and it is hard, and it'll do a one-off part perfectly fine. And then if I know I'm going to be using a tool a fair few times, I'll go ahead and make it out of steel. And,
what is the process for doing that?
Process would be, so if you're doing a body line, make a template, whether you make the template out of a piece of 1 mil sheet or cardboard. And then if it's steel, I'll put it onto 10 mil plate, and then mark out the outside of that profile with a male and female, and then cut that out, plasma cut it out, sand it back, make sure your edges are curved, because if you've got sharp edges, each one of those hits as it's going along is going to put marks all through your material. So make sure the edges are smooth, polish up a little bit, and it'll make for a good job.
That's good. How many sets of tooling do you think you have right now? Like one for every job? What does your tooling outfit look like?
I've had my little hammer for probably couple of years, and I'd say I've probably got 30 different bits of tooling.
Nice.
For sure. Yeah. And it just keeps growing. And I'll stamp. I've got some letter stamps. So if it's a body line of a certain car, I'll just stamp exactly what that is. And if I get another one, I'm good to go.
Very cool. Very cool.
Yeah,
let's
finish another time saver.
Oh no, man, no doubt. Yeah, when you can label it and just like pull it up from the archive, you're like, oh yeah, I did this one 5 years ago, already built, done.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's wrap this up talking a little bit about art. I noticed on your Instagram profile that you posted a little bit of art in the past, whether it was flowers or I think there was a boat in there as well, like a sailboat.
Oh yeah, sailboat. Yeah. So the sailboat was just a guy who wanted he loved sailing, and he wanted like a piece to sit in his work office. and that people could come in and have a look. So I made a nice little sailboat sort of thing for him. And yeah, he really digged it. And then the flower was like I did sort of blacksmith technique and heat it up and bent around.
Yeah.
Like a high heel. If you look at it, it's a high heel, and then there's a rose laying on the top of it. And it was just for my mum, a Mother's Day gift sort of thing.
Very cool.
So yeah, so it's good to be creative, and I was pretty bored, so I was like, oh, I'll make you something nice.
Man, this has been so much fun to have you on the show talking about all of the different things that you're doing. I love the fact that you're able to take, the craft of sheet metal and really contort it to what it is that you want to do, whether it's art and a rose and a high heel, or whether it's an Aston Martin and something beautiful. I think that the skills are transferable, and what you're doing is both art and practical. And, for me to you, thank you so much for being here. This was a ton of fun. Where can the folks find out more about you?
So you can jump on Instagram, as it's Resurrected _metal shaping, and Facebook, Resurrected Metal Shaping. Just started that up. So yeah, and I'm thinking of doing some YouTube down the track too. It'd be cool to make a few videos and do a few creative things and a few how-tos on building cars.
Amazing. All right. Thanks for listening to the Sheet Metal Shaping Podcast. Don't forget to like, share, follow, and subscribe, and we will see you on the next episode.